Last time I talked about Zelda was in the form of a rant, and I gotta admit that video, although entertaining, it didn't really get my point across well. So I figured I'd sit back and actually do my top 10 reasons why I feel modern day Zelda is flawed, and I will be going over the issues I have with each reason. Now, I want to be clear. If you like modern day Zelda, my goal isn't to convince you not to like it. This is for people who like both. Like me, I like both because one, old school Zelda pretty much made the blueprint for many action adventure games. There's so many action adventure games that people today don't even realize was inspired by games like Link to the Past, such as the Darksiders franchise as an example. So modern day Zelda to me, it's kind of been inspired by other games rather than Nintendo doing the inspiration. It's inspired by Ubisoft open world games and other open world sandbox games that have existed way before Nintendo got into the market of making them with Zelda. I personally feel that Nintendo is not doing this type of gameplay style well, and it's relying too much on nostalgia and charm to let the game slide. Once these games kind of wear off in people's minds, as in like the hype and the excitement of getting a new Zelda game, many people don't return to Breath of the Wild, and I'm sure people will not be returned to Tears of the Kingdom. The reason I can say that with confidence is because I have never experienced in my entire life of playing Zelda and people loving the Zelda franchise say that because a new Zelda game has came out, they will no longer return to the old one. The fact that Tears of the Kingdom outright just took over Breath of the Wild tells me everything I need to know. This has never existed before because every Zelda game has offered something unique or different that requires the person to come back to get that particular experience. So even though you have games like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time that are very similar, people don't just say one is over the other. Even a more fair comparison would be regular Ocarina of Time versus Master Quest. Some people prefer Master Quest, some people don't, and some people like both. So I feel that Nintendo has actually went backwards, where now their games are actually stacking on top of each other, and people have no desire to go back to the past games because the past game really didn't offer anything unique, or it wasn't even all that good to begin with. So there's no reason to play it anymore. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10 issues with Tears of the Kingdom and modern day Zelda as a whole. Number 1, the paradox story. The Legend of Zelda franchise has always been known for a great story. It's always been a story heavy franchise, and even the earlier games that rely on story when you played the game, when it came to the instruction manuals and the booklets, they gave you a lot of story and lore, and that was kind of the driving force of the Zelda franchise. Zelda has always had great gameplay, but its story was definitely important. And we can see that with Nintendo's advertisement of both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Don't forget that the big selling point, or one of the big selling points of Breath of the Wild, is that now Nintendo is adding voice acting. So a lot of people felt like Nintendo was going to go above and beyond with their story this time around. Not getting into whether you like the story they told or not, my issue is just bad writing. So I said it was a paradox story, and that's true. The paradox is simple. Zelda cannot both be a dragon and have the Master Sword while traveling through time, and also be in her human form and Link carrying the Master Sword at the same time. This has created a paradox, and Nintendo has created this issue mainly because I don't think they're actually focusing on the story or actually trying to sit down and write a good story anymore. Nintendo even went to the lengths of saying that with Breath of the Wild, they're resetting the timeline, and it sounds like they did this in order for things to make sense, and they've already screwed it up. So of course, my solution to this problem is simple. Nintendo needs to sit down and properly write stories and make sure they don't contradict one another. Now, if you're someone who doesn't care about stories in modern day Zelda, then me wanting a better story has no effect on you. Plus, and ultimately, it's better for everybody. I think if this was not a Nintendo game, if this was not Legend of Zelda, more people would have been critiquing the plot more, and more people would have pointed out how the story makes no sense. But Nintendo sometimes gets passes because of nostalgia, and people have, you know, an affection towards Nintendo because of their childhood. But this is not an excuse. They should not be allowed to give us a bad story and people just ignore it because it's Zelda. Number 2, Nintendo's lack of committing to high stakes in Zelda. Now this goes into story as well, but I want to be clear, Nintendo has done this in the past, so I have no idea why they're not doing it today. What I mean by committing to high stakes is, I'll give you an example. If you ever played Majora's Mask, in Majora's Mask, there's a character named Deku Butler. Deku Butler has a missing son that you hear about, and you don't pretty much think about nothing of it throughout the whole experience of the game. Once you beat the game, you remember that there was a Deku shrub that you see in the beginning of the game that is dead. And it said that this character is dead. And you don't think nothing of it until the end of the game when the credits roll. And even after saving the day and everybody seems to be happy, Deku Butler is by this shrub and you realize that this was his son and he died. And no matter what Link does, he cannot bring this shrub back. I'm bringing this up because this is one of the most memorable things in Majora's Mask. It has also spawned many videos and fan theories of ways to bring back the Deku Shrub. This is kind of resembling of Aerith dying in Final Fantasy VII. Not to the same extent, but many people who were fans of Majora's Mask did try to find ways to bring him back. So if you go to Tears of the Kingdom, the thing they didn't commit with was Zelda's dragon form, and among other things, I'll get into those things in a minute. But Zelda should have remained a dragon. Now this isn't about me preferring her to stay a dragon or not, it's about Nintendo just not being able to take a risk. Nintendo has become so predictable with their writing in Zelda games that even something like when you meet someone shady, you know they're a Yiga clan member. Zelda not maintaining her dragon form, her sacrifice became kind of mute because in the end it all worked out. It really didn't matter. Not only that, it broke the story because they claimed that this was a irreversible form. She couldn't get back from this form, but somehow magically she could, thanks to the ghost of two characters that died hundreds of years ago that just pop up out of nowhere. Another form of them not being able to commit is Ganondorf's reign on Hyrule. Ganondorf is supposed to be the most evil villain of all time. He's so evil, he's a legend. And guess what? I don't feel like Ganondorf has been evil in the last two Zelda games. Every other Zelda game I can think of, when the villain is doing bad stuff, you feel it. Majora's Mask is a perfect example. As the days go by, that moon gets closer, Skull Kids keeps on doing even more evil things, and you can tell that this is a bad guy. Ganondorf, I don't know what he's doing. Like, he messes with a couple temples and, you know, he kind of inconveniently messes with people, but it's nothing serious. It's nothing over the top. No one's dead. No one is being sacrificed. You don't see evil people come to power like you did in Ocarina of Time. In the beginning of Ocarina of Time, there were bad people that actually became more powerful thanks to Ganon because they helped Ganon get to his position. There's just nothing to this version of Ganondorf. He looks cool, but nothing to him. So I think Nintendo, not only should they commit to a theme and commit to actually putting some risk in the plot, but commit to making Ganondorf actually seem like a villain. Like, Hyrule should stop being so happy looking, so bright and colorful looking all the time. There should be a point in the story where Ganon turns it up a notch and the world looks bad and you could tell the effects of what he's doing. Because honestly, if you play these games, it almost like you don't feel like anything's happening with the main plot. It can completely be ignored and you could just play the game. And that to me makes for a bad experience. When I play games like Witcher 3 and the Wild Hunt finally came through, you felt it. When you play games where the story has finally took a turn for the worse, you feel it. You do not feel anything in Tears of the Kingdom. And I'll give you an example before I get off. The perfect time for the game to have turned it up a notch, it's after you defeated all the temple dungeons and then you fought Mummy Ganondorf at the castle. Once Ganondorf realized, okay, Link knows that Zelda's a fake, he knows that I'm the one really behind all this stuff, even though it's kind of obvious. The world should have changed. The world should have got worse. Something should have happened. Bad things should have occurred more, where the people of Hyrule don't just seem like they're going about their life and him being evil don't matter. Something should have happened. That's all I'm saying. Number 3, too many happy people. I kind of touched on this a minute ago, but just to drive home the point, what I mean by too many happy people, almost everybody loves Link and almost every female flirts with Link. Like, I get it. It's kind of interesting if some characters liked Link and some characters flirt with Link and some characters found him to be cool and awesome and then others didn't. That would have been more interesting. That would have made the world feel alive. It would have made it feel like people were actually individuals and not everybody just sucking Link off. That makes for a boring world. When you play an RPG that these Zeldas claim to be an RPG, when you play an RPG, an open world game, when you play whatever, characters should feel unique and different. I'll give you a game that's not even RPG, that each character feels different. Go play the original Jak and Daxter. As you talk to different characters in the world to get power, what is it called? Power orbs or whatever they're called. Each character kind of behaves differently to Jak. Some don't really care about what he's talking about. Some are enthusiastic to see him. Some people already know who he is. Other people just want him to do something and they're kind of just using him. The point is they made a diverse cast of characters and that's not even an RPG. Almost everybody in Tears of the Kingdom is the same type of character. They're all happy. They all want to see Link. And please don't hit me with the very few people that are kind of different. They're very rare. They're very rare, so rare that I latch on to them. It should be a more diverse community in Hyrule. You got all these different looking people, but they all behave the same. Point 4, the map is too big. Now I want to be clear, I know why the map was so big in Breath of the Wild. It was so big because they had the Guardian enemies and the Guardians needed space to move around and things like that. But once they removed the Guardians, this map didn't need to be as big. I know it's the same world, so they can't just make the world be different in Tears of the Kingdom. But Nintendo cannot make big maps and not replace the big enemies that's supposed to be in the map. Please don't hit me with the, well, the map can be used, like the extra space can be used for your vehicles and stuff. That's if you decide to do that. Me personally, I'd rather ride my horse than create a vehicle that only can drive for a short period of time. I'd rather just ride my horse. It makes more sense, and I take a lot of time in finding horses in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and raising them. So I find more enjoyment in that. But in general, the map just feels too big, especially now in Tears of the Kingdom without the Guardians. So Nintendo, quality over quantity. That's something I'm gonna bring up more as I keep going. Quality over quantity. The map doesn't need to be this doggone big. Half of the map is just open field and ain't nothing going on anyway. And before you had someone to fight there, now it's nothing. So get rid of this big map unless you're gonna use it. Point 5, too many quests. Going back to quality over quantity. I understand many RPGs have tons of quests, hundreds of quests, but the problem is that the majority of quests in Tears of the Kingdom and in Breath of the Wild, even some of the main side quests that kind of have a story element to them, they are mostly just fetch quests. And not only are they just fetch quests, because one of the biggest gameplay elements of these games is collecting items for whatever you need them for, food, fusion, whatever. You're gonna have the item 9 times out of 10 anyway. So it's not even like you're reading why you need this item for this character. Like, they might even have a little interesting story why they need it, but you don't even hear none of that because half the time Link has the item. You don't gotta search for it because you already got it, and it's over and done. Half of them is a blur because these are just fetch quests. So you have too many of these fetch quests. I understand you're gonna have a fetch quest in an RPG and an open world game, and there's nothing wrong with them. Like, they can be fun to find things and discover things out in the world, but you got to mix it up, Nintendo. Have more curated quests. Curated quests that actually you wrote a dialogue for, you wrote some story for. You're not just going out and collecting stuff. Like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild have a few mini bosses out in the world. I can't think of too many of any quests where, like, maybe in this particular quest you only can fight this unique monster if you did this quest. Other games do have stuff like that, or you can only have this unique experience if you did this particular quest. Many RPGs have that. Even the quests in Tears of the Kingdom where, there's more of a dialogue, there's more story going on, you're still just doing whatever you're going to be doing normally. It's nothing new in the gameplay loop. So you have too many quests, number one. And as a bonus, you should make more important side quests that are entertaining, because I could tell you this for sure, and I'll end this point here. Go play Majora's Mask. That is a game that is made by Nintendo. That's a Zelda game that many people say had brilliant, dope side quests. Many with rewards and things like that that you can only get by doing the side quests that actually helped your main adventure. No one's going to say that about Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. No one in years to come are going to say, you remember that side quest where I had to go get them bananas for that dude? No one's going to care. No one's going to remember. So make better side quests. Number 6 is Breakable Weapons. Look, I tried to understand why Nintendo has these breakable weapons, but honestly, I see no purpose in them, and it's just a stupid mechanic. Before you say the weapons break to inspire you to use new weapons, just think about how many other games that don't have breakable weapons, or if the weapons do break, you can repair them, and you still use multiple different styles of weapons just because you feel like changing up your playstyle. In Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, each weapon is just some item I use. I don't even particularly have a preferred weapon that I want to use because they're all basically the same. Every long pole is the same. Every sword is the same. Every great sword is the same. They look different, but the animations are the same. And the only difference is really the stats. Speaking of the stats, that's why these breakable weapons are kind of dumb, because the way the leveling works in this game is that everyone levels up with you, and so do the weapons. So really nothing's progressing. Everything is staying the same. Just because everyone goes to level 100 Just because you went to level 100 doesn't mean that you're actually progressing, because now everything's just even. So that's how Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild work. It appears like everyone's going up, but no one is. So when it comes to the breakable weapons, you'll get a few weapons that are powerful that can knock out enemies in a few hits, but you're going to most of the time save them for bosses, because why would you use those breakable weapons on grunt enemies? And it makes the whole system kind of dumb, especially when you find like legendary weapons from the Legend of Zelda's history. You're going to find these weapons and just hoard them. You're going to store them because you don't want them to break. You don't know if they'll spawn again. So it kind of defeats the whole point of finding a cool weapon. What other game do you find cool weapons in and don't want to use because they'll break? It's very stupid, and it's just not needed anymore. If it's about diversity and it's about wanting players to experiment with new weapons, just give them multiple weapons to use. Don't give Link like a stat where he can only use certain weapons depending upon how you build him up. Let him use whatever weapon he wants and let the player choose, and don't let the player be forced into using a new weapon because it breaks, because honestly, this system is just an inconvenience. Number 7, power is given too early. Now, what I mean by this is Nintendo and other Zelda games, if you want to say the powers, they're kind of like the items you get. You do not get all the items in the beginning of any Zelda game that I could think of, but in Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, you get all the powers in the beginning. The items you find in the old Zelda games gave you a sense of progression. As you progressed, you found new items that allowed you to explore new dungeons and even parts of the map that you couldn't explore before. This is a common progression system found in many games. For some reason, Tears of the Kingdom has no real progression system because you get everything you need from the beginning. I'll give you an example. In Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild, you can fight the final boss in the beginning of the game. In order to allow that to happen, Nintendo has to give you everything you need in order to reach them. Sure, you'll be at a slight disadvantage because you don't have powerful gear yet, but honestly, you don't even need it if you're skilled enough. The problem with this is that there is no progression in the gameplay. Every part of the map is even, so you can go to any place you want and you're going to get the same level of challenge no matter which region you start in. Every region kind of needs you to have something to deal with the element, so that's not unique. That's the only hindrance that you have per region, is you need something to deal with the elements of where you are. Outside of that, you can go wherever you want, which means the whole game is easy. So what does that have to do with the powers? I think Nintendo should start giving you powers depending upon where you go. Don't give me all the powers in the beginning of the game. That will give you a sense of progression. But for those who say, no, I want all the powers at the beginning of the game, then the only solution then is Nintendo has to make the game harder. So what I mean by that is, look at something like Elden Ring. Elden Ring lets you go wherever you want, but each level has a certain level cap. So each part of the map has a certain recommended level that the player should be. You can go there if you feel like it. You can be under level, go there, get wrecked, and realize you ain't supposed to be there. And I think Nintendo should take the kid gloves off. If you want to give me all the powers to do what I need to do to go anywhere I want, then you need to make the game more challenging so that if I go to one region, maybe it's harder than another. Everything being the same, and the reason why everything is the same, because of this, how they divvy out the powers, this is annoying to me. It makes the game boring. I don't feel like the game is progression. I don't think my mind is being stimulated with challenge, and games like this do need challenge. The Legend of Zelda is not a Lego game. Lego games are casual games where you can sit there, just have fun, and nothing is very difficult, and that's the style of games those are. Zelda is not that style of game. It's never been that style of game, and even modern day Zelda is not marketed as that style of game. So unless Nintendo wants to just make a smooth ride with no challenges, then you make that. But until then, stop advertising it like it's a regular Zelda game. Number 8, harder shrines and dungeons. Now I talked about this a little bit with the power section, but I'll explain to you what I mean and how this can be done. Most shrines, it's kind of like a tutorial to teach you how the mechanics of the games work. Those should stay because, you know, people still need to learn how to play. But there needs to be a point where Nintendo develops some type of shrines where they feel like the player, okay, you done enough of these, you know, tutorial type shrines. Now we're going to like really blow your mind with some creative stuff that really has you thinking, really gets you stumped. And they need to do this with dungeons. Like, even if they let you go to whichever dungeon you want to in whichever order, there should be technically an order in which the dungeons work. If they do it that way, they say, okay, the player, you can go to the hardest dungeon first, or you can go to the easiest dungeon first. It's up to you. But if you go in order, you'll get an even experience. So everyone wins. You get a player choice with the dungeons. Now with the shrines, you might say, well, how would the shrines work? How would, you know which one's a hard shrine or easy shrine? I'll explain right now. Nintendo should make, let's say 100 shrines. Make 25 of them easy, 25 of them medium, 25 of them hard, and 25 of them extremely hard, right? You take those shrines and you place the shrines all over the map, right? And what you do is Nintendo could just spread them out however they want, or what I would recommend to have even a cooler experience is do this. Because you might bump into easy shrine after easy shrine after easy shrine after easy shrine, and it kind of be, you know, Nintendo could just label the shrine like in some way to let you know, maybe color code them to let you know this is an easy shrine versus a hard one, to let the player know, you know, which one they want to choose. Like let's say if the shrine colors was green, you know, that's an easy one. A yellow one is medium, and red is hard, and maybe some red with a bunch of sparkles all around it. That could be like a really challenging one. And that way the player knows what they're getting themselves into. But let's say Nintendo wants to be a little bit more unique about it. What they could do is still make those pre-made shrines and then have the shrines all over the map. So let's say there's a shrine at Hyrule Castle. That shrine will be there for everybody, but it randomly picks for each player which shrine will spawn in. That way everyone has a unique experience. I think that would be a cool feature that Nintendo could have, because as of now, I'll be clear. I go into a shrine in the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild because I'm learning the game. I'm learning new mechanics. It's fun to do these things. Like it was fun in Tears of the Kingdom to make different, you know, contractions so I could slide on the metal rails and stuff. But once I did it once, I done did it 1,000 times. And they never seem to really switch it up or make me think about it. And that's all I'm asking for. I'm asking for something to stimulate my mind, something to give me challenge. And guess what? For you that don't really want that, just play the easy shrines. So I think this will benefit everybody. Give the player, take the kid gloves off with the shrines and with the dungeons. Make challenging dungeons and shrines so people can have a challenging experience, so they can feel like they actually accomplished something, rather than them just wasting their time playing hundreds of hours and never feeling like anything ever happened. Number 9, Amore lived in world. Now this is gonna be short and sweet and simple because I touched on this a little bit, but I'll go into greater detail. Nintendo, I get it. You know, you want Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom to look a certain way. I'm not saying you gotta change the art style. I'm just asking you to make things unique. I should not go everywhere as Link and everyone loves me. Let some people hate Link. Let there be multiple groups of people that dislike Link. Don't let every shady character be a Yiga Clan member. Don't make everything so predictable. Let me go to a person and they seem to need help with something, but when I try to talk to them, they don't want my help. You know, or maybe they come along with me on the quest. Maybe there's a way Link is already communicating with people, so you know he doesn't need to have voice acting, but give me dialogue choices. Let Link piss someone off. Let Link you know, get rid of this. I think it would be kind of cool, since you want all the female characters flirting with Link. How about you get rid of the fact that Link and Zelda are an item? You know, even though they won't really officially name it, you could tell they're supposed to be. Let Link have a girlfriend. Let Link do some things. Let the world feel alive. And another way they can make the world feel alive is with the money system. So each region in Hyrule has different things that they, you know, specialize in. Like if you go to Zora's Domain, they're gonna have tons of fish because they can swim and catch fish. You go to Goron Village, they're gonna have a bunch of rocks and stones and stuff like that. Make it so that depending upon what region I'm in, the money changes. Like if I go to one place that if I go to Goron's and try to sell them rocks and stones that they commonly get anyway, they're not gonna give me money for it. They're not gonna give me much money. Let me go to the Zora people and try to sell them a fish. They're not gonna buy that because they get fish all the time. Like give me some, you know, make the world feel alive. Like make me feel like this world is a real place. And of course, other Zeldas had factions and, you know, different race of people, and they all seem to be unique and diverse from one another. Like back in the day, the Garuda people in Ocarina of Time, they were kind of like off to the side and no one really messed with them. And, you know, of course, Ganondorf was their king. So Ganondorf brought them up to power when he became, you know, the ruler of Hyrule. But before then, you barely even saw them, and they don't get along with men at all. Like now the Garudas, they just, you know, don't have men in their village, but they really got no problem with men. And that whole, you know, uniqueness of them has kind of been watered down. Like, I'm not saying all of them got to be that way, but like let it be, you know, diverse, because, you know, every other game that has like different groups of people, different factions, they are a diverse cast of characters. Everyone here just kind of seems happy, and they all just like Link, and they all just get along, and The very minute differences between them is that it's just minute. It's so minor that you don't even really recognize it. It doesn't really play a factor. Everyone loves Link except for basically the Yiga clan and the main villains. Like, that's it. And it's kind of boring. And number 10, lean into the RPG that you claim Zelda is supposed to be. Modern Zelda is what I would call a game with RPG elements, but not an actual RPG. There really isn't much player choice. There really isn't any branching paths or decision making, and that's dialogue RPG elements. When it comes to Link as his character, he doesn't have classes, he doesn't have builds, he doesn't really have stats. If you want to say leveling up his health and his stamina is considered stats, then every Zelda game is RPG. There's only one Zelda game that actually has strong RPG elements, in my opinion, that's Zelda 2. That game had strong RPG elements because if you ever played Zelda 2, you know first and foremost, if you do not level up and grind and boost your stats, you're doing next to no damage and you're going to get wrecked. Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, you don't have to do anything out your way. Anything that you wouldn't normally do, you don't have to grind. You don't have to specialize in a class. You don't have to specialize in a build. None of that exists. There's no dialogue options. Everything is just one note. It's an adventure game with RPG elements. So I say lean into the RPG side of it. You did it once, Nintendo, do it again. Turn The Legend of Zelda into an RPG. You already are kind of wanting to do that but won't commit. Turn it into an RPG, and by doing that, you'll have the increased difficulty, because let me tell you something, an RPG is nothing without actual levels, and it's nothing without actually feeling like there's progression. Everyone gets what they want. People are already trying to treat Zelda like it's an RPG, but not really scratching that itch. So I'll get my progression that I want, I'll get my challenge I want, I'll get extra dialogue choices, I'll get basically everything that was mentioned, because now once you put Zelda officially in an RPG element, officially in an RPG bracket, not a game with RPG elements that some people like to say is an RPG just because the Switch ain't got enough RPGs for them, so they like to claim it to be one. Once you officially put that stamp on it, guess what's gonna happen? Zelda's gonna be compared to other RPGs and not compared to other action adventure games with RPG elements, like a Horizon. And once you compare Zelda to RPGs, now I gotta stack up with the big boys. Are we saying that Zelda is on the level of Witcher? No. So I think it'll be beneficial if they lean into the RPG side of the Zelda franchise. So those are my top 10 issues with modern day Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom particularly. And those are the things that I also wanted to be solved and fixed, because I gave solutions as well. Look, I know everyone has different opinions on Zelda, but me personally, like I said in my rant, I'm waiting on Zelda now. If Nintendo remakes an old Zelda, I'll buy it. If Nintendo makes a game in the old Zelda fashion, I'ma buy it. Anything in this new Zelda fashion, until I see Nintendo has upped the ante and actually made a competent game, and not a game that, you know, I'll be honest, I'm not a nostalgic person. When I play Zelda, I don't feel nostalgia, but Nintendo has always been good at charm. It's the same thing I feel with Mario Odyssey, a game with a lot of charm and a lot of character, but it amounted to nothing. When it comes to being a good platformer, that game is the bare minimum. When it comes to an action adventure game, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, bare minimum. There are plenty of other games that have a stronger focus, that do at least one thing superior to other games. There is nothing that Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild that they do that's better than any other game. When it comes to crafting, Minecraft is better. When it comes to exploration, basically any other game is better, because it's one thing to be able to explore, and there's another thing that when you explore something interesting. There's nothing interesting going on in these games to me. For you, if you love it, then this video shouldn't affect you. But for anyone that wants better, these are my top 10 reasons or my top 10 issues. Please share yours in the comment section. See you guys in the next video.